Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Dr. Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Dr. Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner, share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Dr. Tina.
Oftentimes, the children who have lost their parents, going back to school is not easy, but a 504 plan can help them. This conversation with Julie is going to give you very detailed information on how to execute a 504 plan for your child. And at the same time, have you been curious about the term death doula or transformation soul coach? This conversation is going to give you insight to that too. Julie and I have some things that are very similar to the passing of our husband that I did not know until this conversation. Let's get into this discussion now. It's going to bless your soul. Hello, Julie. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Thank you for having me, Tina. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Happy to be in the Widowhood. If you were to the subtitles that was not shown, what would that look like when you hear the word widowhood the first time?
Well, you're asking me a very big question, and I'm glad that we're starting here. Okay, so I'm with you. Okay, so practiced law for 30 years, right? And when Jim died, which was December 6, 2018, and I'd like to honor his day. His birthday is today, October 24th. He would
Oh
have
my
been
gosh.
58 today, so I kind of wanted to honor doing this with you today in honor of his birthday.
Hmm.
Just kind of calling in the energy of his spirit to be with us and just being present in a beautiful way. But my first experience with the word widow, I was literally at the OBGYN, and I guess at that point in time, the GYN for myself. And I remember seeing it on the form and being really, I started to cry. And I was like, oh, this word does not sit well with me. It's very interesting. And I guess Jim died at 51 and I was 50, and I just didn't identify with it. I didn't identify with the word and the language. So today, as I was preparing for you, I said, I don't know how Tina's going to feel about this, but I really was doing a lot of research into the root of the word, kind of the historical patriarchy, like where it came from, the whole idea of being bereft and empty and lost. And, it will be 7 years, and Tina, and I really have taken it to a place of transformation. And I was playing with a new word, actually luminera. And being the whole idea of yes, we have this deep, painful loss, and we all are shattered in the space of it in different ways in our grief. I mean, it's so real and it's so painful. And, I guess the question is how do we go through it?
You said a lot there, and I almost could throw away all my questions here, but I'm just going to pause.
Okay.
My husband, Mark, was 51 when
Oh,
he
wow.
passed. I
Oh,
was
wow.
50 when Mark passed. Mark passed in 2017. It is just on the cusp of 8 years. And
Mm.
I think as a concept of a death doula, ushering people through their loved ones and then those remaining through this transition process, there is a lot of illumination that happens because our society, I believe, has made death such a horrible, dark, unwanting, instead of welcoming the process of the transition of life that is inevitable. So if we go into it afraid and scared, that's not a good way to go into the next version of our life. I miss Mark dearly. Today, I happen to wear his gym shoes because we wore the same size shoe. And but at the same time, I've come into a place that I know his journey was over. Mine's continue. And there's a difference with that I think requires someone a spark of life, of
Mm.
light, because we are so alienated from the idea what good could ever come from this?
I'm with you, like 1,000%. I could echo every single word that you said. First off, I just want to honor that we both were 1551. I find that intriguing,
Yeah,
and I think we should just honor that as just a factual truth. Yes, you know what? They're always with us. We carry them with us every way, but it's like their journey was over, and I think they continue with us in our journey. And so you are doing amazing work with the work that you're doing with widows and others and children, and just amazing giving back. And yes, for me, I do believe, like, as a death doula, we have this sacred breath at the end of life, and that it should be celebrated the same way we celebrate the sacred breath at birth, right?
yeah.
We do so much around like birthdays, but we don't honor that sacred final breath. It just doesn't. Our society avoids and denies it. I'm with you. It's a problem.
It is, and thank you. The work that I do is one to normalize the thing that we've been doing since the beginning of time. How dare we have been a spouse to someone and they took their final breath and we not be recognized? Why should we be hushed into a corner and not be able to say, this is the type of woman or man that you would want to come to the feet of and understand what a relationship and a commitment looks like, good, bad, indifferent, and all of that.
I love
So
that. Oh, such truth. You're speaking raw truth. Like, that's beautiful. Yeah.
we should be celebrated. Julie, in the meetings that you have with people, what or how would you describe divine ashes? Is it, I'll go with that.
So I think first off, it's a great question. And so I have an upcoming book that'll come out in the spring that's called Divine Ashes Ascending, right? And so as I was looking back at this, so I'm a transformational soul coach, recently had the blessing of becoming a death doula with Going with Grace with Alua Arthur and working with our hospice, with the end of life. But as far as divine ashes for me, it's really like the sacredness of the transition between life and death, and
Okay.
that are really and that sacredness with that end of life's process, exactly as you described it, right? What is that transition and how we honor? How is it that's sacred in that space between taking your last breath and actually the process of dying and us continuing to live, right? So I think for me, like my biggest lesson is the sacredness of the conscious living and the conscious dying, right? If I'm going to bring something forward to the universe and that I'm starting really as I'm working on my book and speaking nationally and bringing this message forward, it is that we all have the choice to consciously live and to consciously die. So what happens in between that space? I was like kind of imagining, I was at a workshop with a best-selling author by the name of Sarah Connell, and she's just lovely. And it's the whole idea of an infinity loop kind of I downloaded. And I was seeing it with like spiritual feathers. And I was like, this is so interesting because for me, the connection, I'm sure you feel this with Mark, like the connection is like in your heart and soul, and that continues in the divine. So whether we say God, creator, universe, whatever word that any of your audience uses is the right word for them. But in that soulful spiritual connection, it's eternal. So I see that as almost like a sacred flame, divine ashes. It's sacred. That's how I see
Wow.
it.
Was there a moment of realization that everything you've experienced should be transformed into a book for others?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what a great question. And I'm not sure what you're going to make of this answer, but I really dropped in. I started working with a life coach. I met a gentleman who he himself is a master life coach in neurological intelligence, so dealing with the nervous system, so helping me with trauma and grief. And then we had started to date, and he really had a lot of patience and compassion for my grief. But to answer your question, I was with a woman. Her name is Tina Powers. She's a medium. And there was stuff after Jim had passed that I really needed guidance on. And he was the only person that I could really get it from. And so, his death was, I don't say sudden, and some people deal with an aneurysm or a heart attack and people die in a second. He died in 3 weeks. We did not have a lot of preparation. It was very traumatic and a lot of grief for me and my children. But when I was with her, she says, "Oh, you're going to write a book. And that book is going to be, can't tell you exactly what it is." This was in December of 22. She says, "But it's something about letting go." Interesting. So here I have these notes that I started writing about, becoming a death doula and helping people at the end of life. And really honoring this space between life and death. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Hmm. How did the speed of your husband's passing shape your grief?
Oh, that's a great question. First off, it was hard. It was just horrible. It goes
No,
to
no, no. Let's just pause right there. Our spouse passing is hard and horrible. I don't want to skip past that because people see us in the now
yeah,
and
it is.
they can't think it couldn't have been that bad.
Oh,
It
yeah, man. It was that bad. It was that bad. Yeah,
we
absolutely.
just leaned into it or learned to continue living, but
Mhm.
it was hard.
No, it was beyond hard.
Yeah.
Hard doesn't even give it the words, just there aren't words for it, right? It was guttural, it was painful, it sucked the wind out of my being.
Yes.
I describe in the book, literally pounding the floor, lying flat on the ground in my closet, crying, holding one of his sweatshirts where I could smell him, and just trying to muffle my tears from my youngest son who was still home, and just being beside myself. Oh my gosh. Couldn't breathe. Didn't even want to, definitely moments you don't want to live. Get out of bed. Oh, hard is not even hard for everybody listening that has a recent death and in grief. There's no timeline for grief. And yes, it is guttural, it is heart-wrenching, it is deeply painful. And we cannot get to this transformation of sacredness that I am talking to you without you, which I describe in my book, without it's like the beauty through the pain. We must go through that pain in order to come out to that light. Absolutely.
And when you thank you for sharing that. I wanna
Yeah.
circle back to something you mentioned and let me know if this is the right perspective for you. When someone close to us transitions from this world, not wanting to be here is the thought of, can't imagine life without them. Not that one is actively doing things often to remove themselves from this world, but the concept of existing in their absence is unbearable.
So, you know what? I think it's a really thoughtful question and it's interesting, right? So, that takes us back to the word widow. That takes us back to the identity of who we are once our spouse is departed, or partner, or who loved one, and how our whole life is a dynamic, like the family dynamic and the family, from my case, it was my husband, myself, our two boys, and we had a dog. But all of a sudden, like that dynamic shifts and you are not the same. And when you walk in the door, it's very hard. And I think that existence is maybe that pathway that you're asking the question about is some of the hardest of the pathway, like going through that doorway of finding yourself as an individual separate and apart of is some of the greatest growth that you have to do internally before you can go back to that place of presence, of gratitude and joy to connect with your spouse in a different space.
I would agree with that. And taking that a step further, you're navigating very tough terrain for yourself and also having to do that for your children. What did that look like when the doors were closed and the world was not in your home and was just you?
It was really hard, Tina. My youngest child, I think, he was 16. He was so young. He was at school. We were at MD Anderson when we found out that there was just no treatment and had a medevac Jim home. And my oldest was in college and had to take time off because it was December. He couldn't do his finals. So it was real. And then there was COVID. Okay. So you had that too, So like all of a sudden you have these deaths and COVID comes and then we're all at home. So no, the closed doors, tears, anger, sadness, confusion. How did it happen so fast? Where did it come from? So much. I mean, and then I'll humor you with like, we connect with Jim. So we'll have electricity shift. We'll have things happen with music. My youngest son, William, he was just despondent at a point, and he was watching The Office over and over again, and he was actually in my husband's physical office, and Jim, I mean, believe me, take it as you want, it's our truth, the TV would turn off because Jim's like, "Enough." Like, "You need to snap out of it, you gotta break the spell, William." And
Mm.
literally, William would yell back at the TV and yell at his dad and say, "Dad, I wanna watch this." And it would happen 2 to 3 times, and then eventually my son got upset enough that Jim left the TV on. I swear on my life. So, behind closed doors, I mean, Jim has appeared, electricity turning on and off. He died at 3:33. He was seeing those numbers before he died. He connects, like, to help me for, like, where I'm living. He guides me all the time. So, yes, behind closed doors and in real life, it was rough, and he's also with us.
For people, as you raise your hand and say, believe me or not, what do you think a person is shortchanging themselves by not entertaining the idea of connecting and still having their loved one a part of their life?
Oh my gosh. It's so beautiful having them as part of our lives because we get to experience them in a different form. So, like, as I'm writing this book, I didn't just write this book, Jim channeled it with me. It came through me. It was a way part of my purpose in this lifetime is to help others meet death without fear and to know that they can connect to their loved ones and to open up their heart space in a different way. It's to give them this light of something that is so beautiful and divine. And it opens your whole life to live in a state of, I really believe, in a state of presence and gratitude rather than one of victimhood and suffering.
Hmm. Why do you think death is coupled with fear?
Oh, I think it's because we're so connected to our loved ones, right? Like, we're so connected to how much we share physically in this lifetime. So it's how we connect in the physical. And like I would say, my father, who's 85, who we were talking about, he and I interviewed him for the book. I said, Dad, what is it that you're so fearful of? And he would describe to me, it's not death itself. It's missing like the grandchildren growing up. It's missing weddings. It's missing the milestones. It's not being present for life. And
Mhm.
then I think it's the people that also, my dad included, if you, depending on how you connect to the soul, if you really believe this is it, then it's like, it can be scary. But I think once I believe every person listening, every single human spiritual being can connect. So we each have that gift. I mean, I have a lot of intuitive gifts, but I believe each one of us really can cultivate that. And in that, the fear is removed, you know,
Mhm.
because the peace comes in instead of fear.
So if someone is interested in working with you,
Okay.
how do they connect with you and what services do you offer? If someone's listening to this, their loved one is passed and they are riddled with fear, or maybe they're on hospice and they're at the cusp of stepping into the next version of life, how would one contact you and what services you provide?
So definitely, I have the risingphoenix.life, and you have to do your HTTPS in front of that to find me. Or you can go, my full legal name is Julie Beth Wright Halbert, but Julie Wright Halbert on LinkedIn. So I am a transformational soul coach. You can find me there. I am a death doula. So in two spaces, and I'm so grateful and blessed to work with clients. I find my experience of being a lawyer for 30 years, as well as the past several years of becoming a soul coach and then a death doula. And right, we've lived this. This is real for us. This is not this is our lives. So it's such a blessing to work with people through the transformation of their grief. I believe it's my role only as a guide to help one to work through their pain. And there's so many different modalities to do that and to tap into that space and to honor loved ones that have passed. Or if somebody is young, like ourselves, God bless our husbands that died at such a young age, but we can look at, like, what does it mean to have a death doula? What is it that you would like for the environment for when you do pass? What are things as far as whether it's religious, cultural, spiritual that you would want around you? It's really important to write those things down and to really work in practice to set up a plan for end of life. And there's many of national, international groups, as well as like Going with Grace that I got my certification and myself, but it's a beautiful practice that we can honor the end of life rather than fearing it.
For a person that's hearing both of those terms about the soul and the death doula, can you explain what those terms mean for someone that's never heard those before?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Like, so this is kind of like, and I've only come up with this like in the past 24, 48 hours. So I'm glad you're asking the question. I am thinking that I'm going to describe myself as like a soul midwife. Like if I have to like encapsulate everything of kind of who I am, because it's about the living and the dying. It's not really one or the other, it's both. And so a transformational soul coach, a lot of people that are life coaches for the audience listening is out there to look at like, okay, what is the outcome? What job do you want to get? What type of money do you want to make? Like what are the external ego related things that people are interested in it? That's not me. I am coming to go on the inside. What is happening from a heart-centered space? If you're dealing with illness or deal with yourself or others, like, what is it that you need to tap into? There's something that I'm really profoundly a student of, and I think it's really important. It's called heart math. So it's a science of the wisdom of the heart. And our heart is is a brain of its own. And so gives off the energy throughout our being and calming our nervous system. So it's something that's working with me. It's really working to reframe perhaps that pain in a new way that you can actually find the peace and calm through the grief. There's definitely ways. I love EFT tapping. It's a great tool that I do with my clients all the time to kind of tap through the fear, to tap through some of the grief. There's so many different exercises with that you can do as a modality. The death doula term, it's interesting. Some people call it, end of life. There's some people call it definitely the death doula, but think about it as like a midwife for death. It's really what it is. And so from a hospice perspective, which I'm only now just looking forward to being able to do more with Empath Tidewell in Sarasota, Florida, where I live, is in that aspect, it's really, I believe, and Lewis says this, I think it's a beautiful thing, but it's a circle of support, right? Looking at inclusivity, looking at the patient, looking at all the family surrounding, and you're not doing anything medical. There's no medical involved here. I have no certification in medically at all. This is really coming from a place of support for the end of life. Asking really questions about, even to the point of, Tina, how do you feel as far as your, family members holding your hand, being with you? Like, what is it that maybe you want to smell? What is it you want to hear? Is there a hymn? Is there a psalm? Is there something that if somebody were to sing to you, that would really be what you want to hear at the end of life? Like, there are different ways to go about it. So yeah, my services are, one is like working just through life and through your own, space, but doing it in a very spiritual way. Or the other is working, more with the end of life.
Thank you. I have two choices, and you determine which path we're going to go on.
Okay.
Discussing men, children, and gaps in grief support, or transformational healing and the book approach.
Well, I'm kind of one of those people. I like to do everything. So I'm going to say this first. I'm going to say the second as far as transformational healing in the book, because that's the space I'm in. But I want to say this very loudly because I think it's really important. I know that you're doing work with men and the gap with my children. And there is not enough out there for young men and those who have lost women, as well, they're widowers, to be in a place of support. It's a huge community that I know you're working towards, and I honor you for doing the work. And it's really necessary, and there is a huge gap there. And so we have here something called Blue Butterfly that's for children, adolescents that have lost, whether it's siblings, parents, grandparents. That's a beautiful program that my mother is very actively engaged in and that I had the benefit of working in the past. And so, yes, that the community, so that children know that there's other people around them that are dealing with death and that they're not alone. It's so important. And the same that go for men and, at all ages. So yes, I just want to honor the work that you are doing. And then I would say to you, in the transformational healing space in the book, that's where I'm spending my most time.
Okay, so we're going to try to fit them all in.
Okay, I'm with you.
I believe in your book, there's a combination of memoirs and meditation and journaling.
Correct.
Why is it important to blend those together?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that. So for me, it's not about me. It's about the reader, right? My whole goal in the book is for it to be a healing modality for the reader. So the introduction of my story in the memoir is just to be able to share and to feel my raw pain, to be honest. Like you asked the question, as I described that raw pain, or, even there's a moment that my son William said, "Mom, I heard you crying in the shower." Like I would think of like the water, like being cleansing and transforming and a safe place just to cry and purge, literally purge. And I said, oh, years later, he told me he used to hear me cry and it broke his heart. And I'm like, wow, like, you don't even know what you're going through when you're in it. But I think, you know, that's like just sharing part of my soul, right? But then you have the meditation for the reader. And that's like for you, Tina, for you to hear it for you. How is it that you connect, with Mark? How is it that you connect with your family that's alive on this earth? How is it that in the didactic exercises where I ask questions, what are the things that you wanna say, like, for example, one thing I talked to my kids about, and my one son did this, was to write a letter. Jim died very quickly. He's like, "What can I do?" And he was a writer. And I said, "Talk to dad about the things you're grateful for. Tell him about the things that you are the beautiful memories that you have." But I take the reader, I have all of these questions delineated in the book, and for the reader to do this exercise themselves, and then combine it together and actually read it to the person, your loved one that is dying. And to be able, it is such a gift because we are in such fight or flight in the moment that somebody is dying. And we're working, especially as a caretaker, to give them and to comfort them that we don't remember. You're in such shock. So it's a beautiful practice to be able to look back and say, wow, these were some of my final words to my father. I
Mm.
have them. And that's for the reader. So I use my story, my life only as a guide so that the reader can actually go through a healing process for themselves.
In that same vein, what role did spiritual practice or stillness play in moving from survival to transformation?
Everything. Stillness, the beingness, for everyone listening, we have to stop doing and be able to be in our souls and our spirits in order to come through the pain. So meditating every morning, every evening. There was a moment in time, I talk about it in my book, Tina, but I have a wall of photos and there's so many beautiful memories. And I used to wake up and I would cry every single morning, cry, weep, sob. Okay. And I don't know. One morning I woke up and I looked at a family picture from a vacation in Belize, and we were with the children in a cave. And I remember having the headlamps on our head. And all of a sudden, I brought all of the senses into the experience. And then I started to laugh. And I remembered the exact moment in the memory. And that was the shift. So there's a moment in time which you will shift and you will find the light, but you must be in a state of being before you can go there. And it is literally a doorway, a passageway, however you want to imagine it. It's a shattering of the soul. And as we are shattered, the only way to come through that vessel and to bring in the light is you must come through a state of like homeostasis.
Mm. How has working through the editorial process of your book helped you clarify your own message of divine action?
So where I've been is that I initially started working with a coach, and it was kind of very nonlinear because I'm happy to share this with your audience for anyone who's interested in writing a book. It was a great tool for me. I love being in nature. I love hiking, walking the beach. So I use Otter, and I a lot of times would transcribe my words, and then I would send them to myself in Word, and then I would begin to edit the process. So it was really like a puzzle, and I was putting together the different pieces at different times. And then the questions, just like you so thoughtfully are asking such inquisitive, curious questions, the coach would do the same. And in that process, he would bring me to going deeper into my soul and really connecting with my truth and going deeper. And now I'm getting ready to work. It's a boutique imprint, Mary Dissonance, and the woman name is Donna, who I'm working with. And she is really, it's just a beginning process of going deeper and asking me some of the tough questions you are about being really raw and honest so the reader can know, like, what happened when those doors were closed? What was the dialogue, around getting treatment? What was the dialogue at the very end of life when we were really terrified? When my husband was looking for answers from medicine and there were none to be provided. We haven't even touched this, but initially they said it was cancer of unknown primary. They couldn't identify the cancer. And eventually it was cholangiocarcinoma that MD Anderson only through pathology. And literally, if you could imagine this, the doctor said, Jim, I can treat you, but you're likely going to die in the hospital of an infection, or you can go home. Okay? Hospital, away from your family, or go home. He immediately said he wanted to medevac home. My girlfriend Rachel was with us. There's a wonderful organization for everyone to know about called, it's an Angel Medevac. They medevaced us home by plane, just like ambulance. We literally left at 3 in the afternoon. We were home with our children at 8 p.m. that evening, and he died a week later, 1 week later to the day. And but there are beautiful services that are out there that support families, and just like you're doing, and I mean, it was such a blessing, So it's just no matter how challenging it may be, yes, like, those moments are in the book. Those moments in which we got into the ambulance to go to the medevac. My girlfriend literally, I have a picture of Jim in the back of the ambulance, and I didn't, until I was writing the book, I didn't know she had that picture. She's like, I don't know why I took it, Julie, but it was the last time I knew I was going to see Jim. And, so we have like that moment. And so what it does is it kind of captures different things you want to share. And I will say to you and to the audience, like, even in that moment, he had kindness. He was asking the people that were taking care of him how they were. He was asking them questions about their lives. And I remember sitting in the front seat saying, how does he have this sense of presence to be so mindful of others in this deepest, could have been darkest moment, but he just wanted to go home to his children, and in some weird way he was relieved to go home.
For the person that is listening to this conversation and they're like, I'm going to make purpose out of my pain and I'm going to go do this, what cautionary information would you provide to them as they're in the throes of their grief?
Well, I think what's really cautionary is that grief is not linear for anybody. None of us do it the same. Not one of us do it the same. None of us experience it the same. So I think that's really important to give yourself compassion and grace, and to know that there's not a one way, there's no one way to do grief. I think that's really, really important. And, even though I've evolved through this process and it is my goal to help others as it is yours, even in that case, we are acting as guides to lift people up and to rise from their pain. It's not like a one and done, right? Like, even today, I was standing in the middle of my hallway in my home, and I put my hands to my heart, and I just spoke to Jim, and I just want to honor his birthday and honor how he showed up as a dad to our children and say thank you. So, of course I had tears, that's part of the soul connection. So it's a constant, just people always describe grief as waves, or the water's hitting the shore and the horizon. I mean, that's real. That's real life.
I would agree. Now we get to the men question.
Okay.
You and I have talked about the limited support for grieving sons and men. What do you wish the public understood about men, young boys, males grieving?
Well, I think one thing that's really important is that sometimes you won't see the signs of grief. Sometimes there'll be such strong denial and avoidance to discuss it that it's really shoved deep in, and that our society doesn't promote the emotional expression sometimes, whether it's through crying or sharing of emotions or discussing. That it's really important to be present with young men or our adults that are partners, and really to honor the process of our emotions, to feel. And I think people have to be really aware that some do feel greatly and some may mask it even with anger. And that anger can come out in different ways. And I say, you have to be really patient, but also I think you have to be really mindful. Be kind, be soft, speak, ask questions, ask a lot of questions. And I would really, I think one of my most important messages would be is don't ever make assumptions that they're okay. Don't ever make assumptions that they are okay, because sometimes they will not tell you. And you have to really dig in and ask those questions and be mindful, because our society doesn't promote the sharing of that pain.
That is profound. During our pre-podcast conversation, you educated me on the 504 plan.
Right.
That, I believe, is a hidden gem that more people need to know about. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, absolutely. So we have there's a 504 plan. Many people may be aware in special education there's something that's called the individual education plan. So around the American Disabilities Act, around the ADA, there's something that is section that's called 504, and that you can ask for accommodation. So if you have a child that is in school, that you can ask, you have a right as a parent or as a guardian to request accommodations around the time of grief. And there's not exact period. So I asked, William, I love you. I'm going to share. I asked for my youngest who was still in school, and it was so hard to focus, like for the death to be so fresh and so painful and to have to go to class and take an organic chemistry exam. I mean, you're talking almost impossible. So the 504 plan, you can sit down with the guidance counselor. There'll be a school designee, which could be like a principal, an assistant principal. There'll be different people from the school that would sit down with the family. And if you are not familiar with the process, I also act as an advocate. It's something that I do, nationally, but that you can look for an advocate in this field that can show up and go to school and meet with the district with you to help formulate a 504 plan. But it is a beautiful way to provide additional supports after somebody has passed. And I'll also share with you, my mom and I witnessed this through the Blue Butterfly program, is that so many young children, especially middle schoolers, unfortunately are bullied. And I think the teachers give extra attention because they're aware that the child is dealing with a really tough situation at home. And other kids sometimes are just envious that a child's getting extra attention. So we really have to talk to our kids. And the 504 plan is a wonderful way to provide some additional services. And I mean, I think I shared this with you on our pre-podcast that William needed to release energy. So I asked, he was he was on the track team. I'm like, clearly he couldn't go out to the field by himself and run the track. But I was like, we were in Florida, there's steps. I said, can we make some accommodation for him to literally have the opportunity to run the stairs? And that was part of his plan. You could be as creative as you need to be for whatever your child's needs are.
Thank you for sharing that. And when they do that, who in the school do they speak with regarding that?
I would say you look for your guidance counselor. If not, there's a case manager that deals with special education and 504 in many schools throughout the nation. So at the Council of Great City Schools, we represent, I was in a position as a lawyer for 30 years, 78 school districts, right? So there's often a case manager at the school site, or there's a director in the school district. But almost always there should be somebody at the school site that's dealing with IEPs and 504s. And you can always ask the guidance counselor as well. And if you can't find them, you can always email me and I'll help you.
And your email address?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. It's julie@risingphoenix.life.
Thank
And
you.
I mean that, like, I help people all the time. I've helped some people in higher education. It's a place, actually, Tina, where I give a lot of pro bono time because I had the blessing of really working with my colleagues at the Council of Great City Schools of helping to craft several of these laws, working on U.S. Supreme Court cases on special education. And I feel like it's a gift that I've been blessed with through my education to give back to others. So even though I'm in this space of working, on this transformational soul coach in my book, it's really important. You know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to add a section in the book on 504. I have to look to see what I have, but it's really important. And I'm glad that you raised it. And people need to be informed of what their rights are and what they can do to help their children.
This conversation has been very informative. I try to give an opportunity for my guests to kind of flip the position here and see if you have any questions of me.
Oh, sure. I would love to do that. So
Sure.
you've been doing this podcast for a long time and working with all kinds of people. What is the greatest lesson that you have learned that you share with others in order to go through the process of grief?
That's a good question. I know everybody does this differently, but if you find yourself isolated
Mm,
for an extraordinary long time, to the point that all you do is go to work and come home, you put on this functional disposition at work, and then you come home, and as you're driving home, you are collapsing, and nobody knows you're doing that. There's not one friend, not one neighbor, not one relative. I encourage you to reach out.
mm.
There are moments in this process where you will need to be alone because you have to travel this road individually. But if no one knows, if people have been asking how you're doing and you say, "I'm okay," and you're not, maybe you have to hire a mental health professional, a therapist, psychologist, a grief coach, somebody that can be that advocate for you. Because as we started this conversation, this is hard.
Very hard.
This is like, I was in the Army for 21 years, an Army officer, breast cancer survivor, birthed some kids. None of that compares to the
Right?
level of difficulty
I'm with you.
and long, ongoing part of my life.
Mm.
I would encourage you to reach out, maybe email me at widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.com. Go to one of our website, or we're on social media and message me. This is hard, and I encourage you to have community.
Yeah, you really are illuminating something that I think is full circle from our conversation. We have to build community. And one of the things actually I was talking with a coach today of mine was creating something called Luminaire, the whole idea of the light and creating, I wrote this down actually, an awakened feminine archetype, changing our language around widowhood to being one of like a flame of internal light, a flame, but a circle and a community of support.
Mhm.
And I think what you're saying is so critical because that person in that card that's crying, if nobody knows, they're surviving. But in order to thrive, you have to lean into your community, into your tribe. And, my mother, I describe her in my book as a heartwood. I have family members, my sister, my cousin, my dear girlfriends. I wouldn't have survived without them, Tina. And I was that strong, I hate to say it, badass lawyer. There was nothing that was going to knock me down. I worked with a lot of men. I was tough as nails, and this took me to the ground. And without supports, I would never have survived. So yes, that's like the most beautiful answer you could possibly give. And also for people to know you are not alone. You are not alone in this grief. There's so many of us that have had similar experiences. And even so we may experience it differently, we still need the same supports. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you. Any other questions?
Sure. So
Okay.
so how and do you connect at all with your husband, Mark, and how does he in your life?
The first week after he passed, it seemed as if there was a lot of connection. Then, I wanna say it'd been about 6 months, I was making the bed one day, and it was our marital bed, and I walked just making the bed, doing what you need to do, and I walked on his side, and it was like I walked I walked through him,
Wow.
and I could smell him, and I tried to move backwards into the same space where I smelled him, and I fell to the floor and just crying and just I think I was screaming out, "I'm right here, I'm right here." And that was just like, I mean, I could smell him, everything. I've had a couple of dreams about him, and the dreams have been more of him alluding to the fact for me to continue living and his job here is done. And the home that I live in was the first home I ever purchased without him because we had purchased property together, and I closed on this house, and I came in here with a blow-up mattress. I was like, "If the mortgage starts, I'm in here tonight." And I came in this house, and I can't remember everything that I did, but I remember falling asleep and waking up, and he was just standing there. He had never been in this property because this is new, and he was walking through the house, and he would walk down the steps, and he would just look back at me and smile. He was walking through the living room and look back at me and smile in the kitchen, and he said, "You're gonna be alright." And that was the last time I had a vision, a dream, or anything from him. Now, when our kids are being children, I mean, they are adults, and I'm yelling at him for that, that's a different thing altogether. Like you out here in eternity, and I'm over here parenting.
It's
That
hard, right? I
I'm like, "Sir, I have questions about this setup."
Yeah,
Like,
I need some help.
I think I got played.
You know, I wa
So
I wanna honor something. So your gift of the intuition of the smell, some people are not familiar with that, but that is a very strong, intuitive gift, And it is not one that I've experienced, but several people do experience that. That's a very special gift of intuition. I mean, I don't know if if you're familiar with that. But that's really a beautiful gift. And for your audience listening, I've been taught, right, for your dreams. So when he's telling you that his journey was over and look at all you're continuing, that is real. If you wake up and you know it, it is literally, it's a visit. It's very different than being like just in a dream state and having a dream. But if you wake up and you can really articulate exactly what you saw, experienced, and whatnot, I mean, I have the same type of experiences, and you just know that that was actually a visit, and he was literally guiding you. It's beautiful. It's awesome.
And those are the things that just give you pause in this life.
Absolutely.
Julie, I just want to say thank you for being here for this conversation. I am going to say something to our listeners, people that have joined us, and I would ask you to close out this conversation, maybe with any final words, something you feel like we didn't cover or wanted to share, and once again, how they can connect with you.
Absolutely. First off, I just want to say this was such a blessing. I'm so honored that you asked me to be here. I've enjoyed every moment. I think that we have spoken raw truth to everyone listening. And my final words would be yes, there are divine ashes, that you go through the pain, but you can rise, and to be present and to give yourself just moment by moment by moment, that you will transform through it, and that you will become that vessel of light, and that each one of us can become that luminaire, can become that woman that really is a sacred light, and while being mindful of those around us, to go through this process. So it's important, and you can find me at julie@risingphoenix.life is my email. Feel free to email me, to go to my website, which is risingphoenix.life as well, or LinkedIn as Julie Wright Halbert. You can find me there. So I'm honored, and I'm just so grateful, and I honor each one of you that's going through the pain right now, and to believe, to know that you will rise. You truly will. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then, visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.